Welcome back to class. Today we are going to learn about performance-based assessment and portfolio assessment. So these are the objectives for today. We are going to talk about performance-based assessment, the definition and how we use it, and also portfolios. Okay, let's talk about performance-based assessment. Performance-based assessment refers to where another directs a child to answer specific questions or perform specific tasks, and then collects data on the child's answers and performance. So when an assessment is focused on or want to see students' progress or performance, then it's called performance assessment. So performance assessment is a term to define or categorize some forms of assessment. So when an assessment is looking at or focused on a child's performance or progress in his or her natural setting, it's called performance assessment. So another term is when an assessment, performance assessment, is done in a naturalistic context. When an assessment is done in naturalistic, realistic context, then it's called authentic. So like when a child plays, if you observe the child's behavior, it's called performance assessment, also called authentic performance assessment. Performance assessment is useful with young children and it informs teacher directions. Also, it can be used as different forms, like in the most way, the performance assessment is used as informal, but sometimes formal assessment can be a performance assessment too. And performance assessment can be used as formative, like ongoing assessment form, and also summative assessment. Okay, talking about the purpose of performance-based assessment, we want to understand students' achievement or progress through performance-based assessment. And this performance-based assessment is informal assessment because it is directly related to the teacher's instruction oftentimes. And so the performance activity is a natural outcome of ongoing curriculum or instruction and not a separated type of experience that is unfamiliar to the child. So it is often used to evaluate whether early childhood programs are meeting the needs of young students. So we often use this type of assessment to evaluate the quality of the program. Okay, these are the types of performance-based assessment. Teacher can use interviews to find out what child understands about concepts, for example. The teacher simply asks questions when the child plays or when the child is doing something to ask the child's understanding or to help the child's performance. Structured interview is planned by the teachers to acquire specific understandings about child, like after reading a story or after the child completes worksheets. These results can be used as diagnostic means by having the answer from these assessments. So teacher can find out what kind of help the child needs. And the contracts are the plan between a child and a teacher, or child, teacher, and parents. And the teachers records a child's progress. As you see in this example here, so for students who have some problems engaging in a school programs or activities, teacher and the students sit together and discuss the expected school behaviors or activity or objectives during such activities for a specific time frame, or like half of the school day, or whole school days, or whole school day, or several school days. So they will create some plans with expected behaviors for such times, and the teacher can provide like some simple intervention like visual directions for the students, like visual schedule or visual cue cards, or if the child can read, then teacher provide like simple written directions to remind the child to perform these expected behavior like occasionally. And the teacher records how the child performs and meets the behavior expectation they discussed during those activity, and then eventually student can get rewarded. And also teacher directed assignments or quizzes, and games, work samples or portfolios. And projects can be considered as performance-based assessment if the assessment is used to see the student's performance and progress. Okay, so you can use form of observations, documentation, rubrics, or checklist rating scale. However, you want to make sure that your teachings and your assessments are well connected to standards. Like these days, we're considering like, for example, Common Core. So we want to measure students' performance and progress that meets the standards. So here's the examples of performance-based assessment informal. You can take a picture of a student when the student is performing something, and when you see some progress, and you can leave memo like this, so it can explain what the child is doing and what the child can do. So as you can see, you can include some standard, state standard or Common Core. These days we are using Common Core standard, state standard, CCSS. So you can see students learning and progress, and so you can provide a list of standards that is supposed to be covered through this activity, and then you can check off the standard covered, so you can see students' progress. Here's some advantage of using performance-based assessment. You can conduct this performance-based assessment in natural context, so it's easy and it can be used as informal. And also, it can fit with each child's needs and so you can see their own understanding level, and you can provide continuous feedback, and parents will really love it. Alright, some disadvantage of using this type of assessment. It's very subjective, so it can provide some biased interpretations by teachers, right? And it's all teachers' work, so it can be considered as time-consuming work. And in most cases, performance-based assessment is used as informal assessment, so reliability and validity may be questionable, but I really like the performance-based assessment. It's easy and parents will really like it, right? Okay, now let's talk about portfolio-based assessment. I believe you're pretty much familiar with this type of assessment, so it will be easy and quick. Okay, here is another justification for needs of various alternative assessments. So the traditional ways of assessment, the standardized test, provides letter or points or grades, and the standardized tests, they do not provide that they do not represent a student's progress or achievement in depth. So we need to use many alternative assessment, including portfolio assessment. So portfolio is one of the alternative assessments, and of course, all of the data from performance-based assessment can go to the portfolio. And portfolio can provide a holistic picture of a child's progress and achievement throughout the year, so you can evaluate students' progress. And by looking at how a students did in the portfolio over time, he can look back by himself, and he can see how his effort has improved. Okay, here's the types of portfolios. There are generally four types of portfolios. The first one is working portfolio. This is just like a collection of student work. A teacher just collect a student's work for future evaluation. And then the evaluated portfolio are the most common types. So evaluated portfolio allow the teacher to make an assessment of a student progress, and these type of portfolio are used to report students' progress to parents, because usually evaluated portfolio includes a teacher's interpretations or details. And showcase portfolios are used when they have some special events like open house events. So a teacher picks some representative work, like best work from the student's portfolio, working portfolio, and like present. So it can exhibit students' best work when some groups of parents are in the school, so the parents can see a student's progress. Okay, let's talk about how to organize a portfolio. Well, there are a ton of ways you can organize a portfolio, but the easiest way is to organize it by developmental approach, developmental domain, or developmental skills. For especially if you are teaching young children, this can be the most convenient way to organize a portfolio, like because they have less developmental domain and more informal assessment. So like art, activity, movement, math, science, language literacy development, and personal social development. So you can organize students' work by this developmental approach. You can also organize your portfolio by subject area. Like this approach can be used for older children, like middle school, high school students. First, you can include some standardized tests or accomplishments tests, and then you can include some example, like students work samples across curriculum, like language art, math, and spelling. And then you can also include teachers' observations, your own measure, like teacher design tests, like quiz, something like that. And then you can include some more forms as well. Now, let's talk about how to set up and use a portfolio as an assessment system. So, you you first need to determine the purpose of portfolio. We talked about there are four different types of portfolio. So let's say I want to use the portfolio to evaluate students' progress. So I want to go with evaluated portfolios. I said that's the most common type of portfolio. So I chose the purpose of portfolio, and then I have to decide how it will be organized. So like I said before, you can use developmental approach or subject area approach, but easiest way you can consider to organize a portfolio is by time, like chronological organizations. Maybe the best, maybe the easiest way you can organize a student's portfolio in developmental domains or subject area, so you can see students' progress in order, right? when you create a portfolio, remember that you can create a table of contents, and then whenever you have some new items added, you can update the table of contents, and then you can place that table of contents in the very beginning of portfolio, so you and parents can see what is in the portfolio. Also decide where and how it will be stored. Your textbook say you can use pizza boxes or grocery bags, like plastic crates, office supply boxes. You can use any clean boxes or things, and you can find a safe place you can store students' work and portfolio. Also determine what types of evidence, what types of documents, or what types of students' work or items can go into the portfolio, so stakeholders can see and determine the students' progress. So you should have your own rules to organize and set up a portfolio for your own students. Okay, in terms of what types of evidence can go into a portfolio, here is examples. IEP information, test results from standardized tests, teacher design tests, curriculum-based assessment, any test result, and teacher observations, and teachers observation note, teacher design test, and also students' work like writing and drawing samples and many other things. But if you think there are other things that can represent students' progress or achievement, then you can include those items. It's not limited. Advantages and disadvantages of using portfolio to report students' progress. So some advantages you can think of are it's very flexible, and it's a good way to report progress to parents, and you can also include student input, right? However, it's very time consuming. Teachers should organize, teachers should collect students' work, such things, so it can be time consuming. And fairness issue. For some students, their portfolio can be really thick and include many information, but some students, for some reason, their portfolio may be really thin, so it cannot represent the student's progress. Then it's going to be the fairness issue. So because it's subjective evaluation, so that's the pros and cons. Now let's talk about IEP and IFSP briefly. Next semester we'll talk about and we will practice creating IEP and IFSP. But I just want to briefly go over what is IEP, IFSP, and what's the difference between these two. Okay, IEP forms are available online, and each state has their own IEP form. So if you go to each state's Board of Education webpage, then you'll be able to find the required template for the state. So we will talk about Illinois IEP next semester. But before that, I want to highlight the difference between goals and objectives. And then I want to highlight how to create a measurable objective. So like I said before, each objective must include these 5 elements: student behavior condition criteria and mastery of behavior. These are the required elements for a measurable objective. Here's the difference between IFSP and IEP. IFSP stands for Individualized Family Service Plan. So this plan is for individuals aged from birth to 2 years and 11 months, and this plan is intended to support their families as well. IEP stands for Individualized Education Program, and the IEP is for children's age from 3 to 21 years old, like more like school age children. Under IFSP, a child and his or her family can receive early intervention in their natural settings such as home and daycare. An IFSP team member can include parents, other family members as requested by the parents, and service provider, service coordinator like home service provider, daycare teacher, and also professionals who involve in evaluation, assessment, and diagnostic process. IEP, you as a teacher, if you create IEP, then you must include information about how the child can be supported and how the child is supported in mainstream environment with other typically developing children, because we don't want to separate the child without reason, right? And the team member can include parents, regular teacher, special ed teacher, a school representative, and a person who can interpret the result of the evaluation, like special ed teacher you, and like school psychologist, and other therapy teacher like OT, PT, ST teachers. So now we are going to take a quick look at Illinois IEP form. You see the link here, right? So you can visit the link and take a quick look at IEP form. Later in this semester, in this class, and SPED 508, we are going to learn how to develop an IEP for students with disability and how to develop observable, measurable, good IEP goal for your student. But for now, you can just visit the webpage and take a look at the form provided by ISB, Illinois State Board of Education.